Hello and welcome to the HR Like a Boss podcast. I'm your host, John Bernatovich. I have embarked on a journey to get to know amazingly awesome HR and business professionals with the hope to find out what it takes to do HR like a boss. If you enjoy the show, please make sure that you subscribe and hit that 5-star rating. Welcome back to the HR Like a Boss podcast. Super excited to have a friend of mine that I've known for a number of years, local to the Cleveland area, Sarah Eppink. Welcome to the HR Like a Boss podcast.
Thanks so much, John. I'm so delighted to be here with you.
But I got to start you out with the same question I ask all of my guests who are so gracious to join me on the HR Like a Boss podcast. The very first question is, how would you describe the purpose of human resources?
So this is a good question, and I really believe we are ever evolving, obviously. And I think in the past, obviously 5 years, we've seen such a significant evolution. But I always go back to the roots of HR being to support the human talent of the organization. And because of that, I really believe that HR is one of, if not the most important role in an organization, because if you think about it, we support human talent, and we can talk all we want about organizational change, organizational strategy and growth, but organizations are just a ambiguous entity. We're made up of people. And so if the people don't change, the people don't grow, the people don't develop, then neither does the organization. And so HR as a role is critical in my perspective.
The work that you've been doing, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, which portion of that consultative support you mentioned around leadership development, talent development, one-on-one coaching, more broader leadership coaching and support and training, which one do you think has had the biggest impact on the people you work with and the businesses you serve?
I would say that would be the individual one-on-one leadership coaching that I provide. And it's actually what I'm most passionate about of all of the things that I do. And I enjoy all of my work, but I'm really passionate about supporting individual leaders on a one-on-one basis. And the reason that is because I get to create a relationship with my client, a rapport with my client that is unlike any other development opportunity. It is truly 100% customized and tailored. You end up creating space for your client to pause and to think. And if you think about it, we're always go, 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 go in our workplaces and in our roles every single day. We don't afford ourselves the opportunity to pause and reflect. Coaching builds that in. My clients share things with me that they feel might be holding them back. Sometimes I hear things that they've never shared with anyone else ever. And coaching also, because of the nature of the relationship, there's a built-in accountability for real behavior change that involves real-time feedback. We talk about things. My client will go off and experiment with new behaviors, get feedback on how they're doing, observe that, how they feel in that behavior, come back, we'll talk about it, what worked, what didn't, what do we want to do now, and talk about impact. When my client has direct reports, and most of my coaching clients are in high levels of leadership, when my client has direct reports, their change and their awareness ends up cascading through their team, and that can shift a team culture in a really positive way.
What do you see changing, evolving? What should we in HR expect as it relates to this new group that will come into the workforce and its impact on human resources and businesses in the community?
This is so interesting to me because I've, as your question denotes, I've experienced the next upcoming workforce in our organizations live real time. And what I've observed and what I've noticed about them has actually led me to do a lot more research and find some statistics about this upcoming workforce. So I really believe that the world of HR is going to change again sooner than later. And so when I say again, obviously those of us who are in HR, we saw a significant challenge to how we typically do things during the pandemic. And then we saw the Great Resignation. And now there's an astronomical number of roles still yet to be filled. But I think the next challenge that is coming much sooner than later, I see this with my students and with young professionals, even some of our more tenured workers and employees who really just want to think about work differently. Right now, we're still using a traditional full-time model of employment and roles. And I do believe in the very near future, we're going to be forced to implement something that I'm casually calling, this is my word, not anybody else's, I'm casually calling radical HR. And what I mean by that is the future workforce does not necessarily want one full-time role. Most of my students don't want one full-time role. They want to freelance full-time. So gig economy, or a term that I just recently learned is the strategic talent sourcing channel. And so I believe that filling full-time roles is going to be increasingly a significant challenge. We're going to have more challenges filling those traditional roles over time. And the future workforce really wants a variety of work that they enjoy that funds their lifestyle. Now, I do have some stats for you, but I'm going to rein in my answer because I can tend to get really passionate about it. And unless you actually want to hear the statistics, I'm happy to share. And then I'm also happy to share a little bit about, I think those statistics are eye-opening, but also how do we as HR professionals support this departure from traditional HR? So stats if you want them.
Share the
Okay.
stats. Yeah, no, you've teased us with it already. So
I
yeah, I know you did it on purpose.
did.
You got to have people begging online for, okay, Sarah, yell out the stats.
I know, I dangled the carrot. So I've been doing, as I mentioned, just some research, and Forbes actually has a lot of research around this. So latest and greatest research from Forbes in 2021. So 39% of Americans, that is 59 million working Americans performed freelance work in 2021. That's a third of our workforce. A third of our current workforce is already doing freelance work, either in addition to their full-time roles or solely as freelancers. Among that number, 35% of them are freelancing full-time, which means they're getting 100% of their income full-time. That translates to $1.3 trillion annually in annual earnings pumped into the United States economy. That's a lot of money. Going back to my college graduates, my college students, all of our college graduates that we are so fortunate to impact in academia, 51% of recent college graduates are performing freelance work post-graduation, and therefore are becoming open to it as a possible long-term career track. And they're not alone. These numbers are going to continue to grow. So by 2027, if we continue at this pace, 2027, that's just over 3 years from today. If we continue at this pace, more than 50% of the American workforce, that's 86.5 million people, John, will be participating in this gig economy. Think about that. So the HR implication of this, if we think about this from HR professional, from our standpoint, is how do we restructure and redefine these roles? How do we get leadership on board also with taking a non-conventional viewpoint of these roles? How do we market these opportunities? How do we pay them? This is non-traditional payroll. And then also ongoing, how do we support this differently structured workforce once they do come on board? This is such a vast departure from how we're doing HR today.
How would you describe someone that does HR like a boss?
someone that does HR like a boss is a bit non-traditional. We are disruptors, we are progressive thinkers, and non-conventional thought leaders with influence.
But I really appreciate, Sarah, you being on the show. Thank you. You were an incredible guest.
Thank you so much, John. I really enjoyed spending time with you.
Thanks for checking out the HR Like a Boss podcast. If it resonates with you, please leave a rating and review, or better yet, subscribe and share with a friend. Until next time, let's continue to aspire to do amazingly awesome HR.